This is Mark Guerrero. Welcome to East LA Music Stories, episode 28. My guest is Nancy Sanchez, or Sanchez, however you want to pronounce it. Hi, Nancy. She's an incredibly talented singer. She does mariachi. She does what I call punk mariachi. I mean, she's a force to be reckoned with. I met her recently and was very impressed with her. And so this is kind of interesting because this is the first time I've interviewed somebody pretty young. You know, I've been interviewing the veterans and all the guys from the 50s, 60s, 70s, because we're all getting old and we're starting to die off. So got to get those stories. But I thought this would also be a good idea because it'll attract some younger viewers. And I'm kind of frustrated that the young people are not watching these interviews. And they should be, because they can learn a lot from the people whose shoulders they're standing upon and learn from their experience. Mm-hmm. So hopefully this will be a little crack in that to bring some younger viewers in to see all the videos. So Nancy, how are you?
Mark, I'm doing great. First of all, I just want to say thank you for inviting me to your podcast here. This is amazing. And I feel like you're right. More younger people need to be watching this and really getting to know a lot of the artists that you've been interviewing, because we are standing on their shoulders. We're standing on your shoulders on a lot of the, you just recently played with Los Lobos. That's one of my favorite bands. Yeah. And I feel like I've been listening to Los Lobos since I was 5. So thanks to, you guys, there's so many doors that have been opened for us, for my generation. My generation, I mean, I'm in my 30s, where I'm millennial, and I am grateful for all the people that have come before me, that have opened doors for me.
I think you're in the minority at this point. A lot of young people, they're just aware of their own generation and only care about their own generation of music, and many times, and they don't bother, but I'm glad you understand and care. And you're the first youthful guest I've had. So you have
God, I love that.
You're a pioneer.
That's what this episode should be called. Youthful, the first youthful guest. Right. I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'll call it that. The first young whippersnapper.
That's whippersnapper. That's it. Right. I love that.
Well, I noticed when you texted me the other day, you said okie dokie artichoke. So that's pretty old school, very redneck. Oh, absolutely. Nobody says that, but I say it. I say it. Time ago. And some other lady I just spoke to, I think it was yesterday, said okie dokie artichoke. So I think it's coming back.
It's coming back. Things come back around, don't you think?
Right. It's hip again.
It's hip again.
So you were actually born in Mexico. Mm-hmm. And was it Toluca?
I was born in Toluca, Mexico.
Talk about that.
Yeah, the capital of the state of Mexico. If some people don't know, Mexico does have states. And Mexico City is the capital of the country, right. But Toluca is the capital of the state of Mexico. I was born there, and I was brought to the United States when I was 4 years old. So, somebody asked me the other day, Mark, they were like, well, you were born in Mexico. Do you consider yourself Mexican or Mexican American? Is it weird to be Mexican American? And I said, no, I consider myself Mexican American because I grew up in the United States. And so I am very much American because of that.
I agree with you.
Yeah. I mean, I feel, yes.
No, I did want to say that, right, technically, a Chicano is somebody born and raised in the United States of Mexican descent. However, there are blurred lines in terms of if you come young and, obviously you're bicultural, you're binational. And so you are a Chicana, you are Mexican American. But the people like Carlos Santana, he came here as a child, but he refuses to be called Chicano. He just says, I'm a Mexican. But that's his choice.
Interesting. Yeah.
Choice. But he's a Chicano too, because he truly is Mexican American. He's got both cultures, both languages, both cultures. So, but that's, it's a personal choice. But I love the word Chicano, and I wear it proudly.
I do too. And my parents don't call themselves Chicanos. My parents identify as Mexican, and they migrated to the United States when they were in their 20s. I think my mom was like 21, 22. My dad was 24. So their formative years were spent in Mexico. So they've been here more than half their lives, and they still don't identify as Chicano. They identify as Mexicano.
My grandparents, my dad's parents, came to the United States probably in 1910 or something. And they lived here all their lives, and they never learned English. And they were Mexicans, and they never needed to. But yeah, so people do that too.
Yeah.
Especially back then.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so interesting. But I definitely consider myself Mexican American.
Okay, well, you certainly are, and your English is perfect, and you're truly bicultural. So Toluca, isn't that relatively close to Mexico City?
It's about maybe 2 hours away or less now, because now there's like certain carreteras, roads that you can take that are more direct from Mexico City straight to Toluca. So now it might be like an hour away. And also there's two new features in Toluca. We now have our own airport. So you can actually leave from here and land in Toluca, which I have not done yet. I haven't done that yet. I have to do it. And also they're making a train that's going to go directly from Mexico City to Toluca, and it's super fast. So it's probably going to be like a 30-minute ride. I don't know.
A bullet train.
A bullet train. Yeah. Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of migration from Mexico City to Toluca, because Toluca is such a beautiful city. The one thing that I don't miss is the cold. It's always cold. It's the highest elevated city of all of Mexico.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and we have a volcano. It's called El Xinantecatl, which means el hombre desnudo, the naked man.
Oh my God.
And it snows in El Xinantecatl. So Toluca is in its surrounding areas. It's always cold and it rains. And I am a California girl. I need the sun.
Yeah.
So that's the only thing I don't miss.
No, it must be one of those old school, old Mexican towns that still has a charm of like 100 years ago and all that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes and no. It was like that, but now it's pretty metropolitan. It's one of the cities that has grown a lot in the last, I don't know, 10 years. Like,
does it have
a
its
booming
old town?
city.
Does it have its old town, or it's still like it was?
It has like the old town where there's this plaza. It's called Los Portales, and it still feels like you're like the 1800s. Like La Catedral is there. It's got its capillas and everything, but it's grown a lot. A lot of people. I mean, there's been a lot of people who have migrated to Toluca from different areas, from Michoacan, from different parts of other states, and it's now a booming city.
Wow. So how did you get involved in music? Did it run in your family?
I have a picture, and I don't have it right now. I have a picture of my great grandfather played saxophone in the Banda Municipal de Michoacán. That's like the municipal band of the town of Michoacán. And I think it comes from him, from my dad's side. He loved music. My grandfather, my dad's dad, my grandfather loved music. And my dad and all his siblings have been musicians and are very creative. My tias are dancers. They're folklorico teachers in Toluca. My dad's the only person from his family in the United States. So most of his family is there. And so every time I go, I know my tias are just very creative. And I feel like that creativity comes from the Sanchez family. And my dad, plays guitar and sings, and he was always involved in estudiantinas and guitar ensembles. And he's such a bohemio. You give him a guitar and he'll sing anything. He knows so many songs. Like if you name the most obscure Mexican song, he will play it. He just has an amazing memory. And so I grew up always knowing that my dad was a musician. And when I was 10 years old, he put a guitar in my hands. And I have to show you this picture. I don't have it with me, but I am literally in tears because I did not want to play guitar, Mark. I was such a girly girl. When he would teach me how to play the D chord and the G chord, I would cry. I was like, this is not for me. I am not a guitar player. And he kind of forced me to play. And now I'm so grateful to him because I didn't know better. And now I make my living as a guitarist too. So music was always a part of my childhood because of him. And then music in school played a big, big role in my life, which is why I now teach in a couple nonprofits.
Nice.
But in elementary school, I remember playing the flute. I played the clarinet. I was in choir all the way up to high school. And I was kind of a rebellious child as a teenager.
I'm not surprised. By the way, I played clarinet too.
Oh, you did?
6 years in school.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, the clarinet's a cool instrument. I
It's
just
not
don't
too
like
hip, but it's a good instrument, great instrument.
Yeah, but the reed, I can't do the reed. The whole like, no. And then so my dad, because I was kind of rebellious, my dad was like, we need to put you in a program where you can go after school and you can keep your Mexican heritage alive. And I grew up in Orange County in Fullerton, and there was a program, an after school program for kids in Anaheim called Ritmo Mariachi Kids. And this teacher, this old teacher, mariachi player, just started a nonprofit, and he just taught every child that would come, his way, how to play a mariachi instrument. His name was El Maestro Zavala. I'll never forget him. He passed away in 2020 because of COVID.
Oh,
yeah, he was older, but he was my first mariachi teacher, El Maestro Zavala. And that was my first experience playing mariachi music. So I grew up with my dad being a musician and music in school, but then I really took myself seriously as a musical person when I entered the mariachi world. And my first experience in the mariachi world, I was around 14, 15 years old, was in that program. And I already knew how to play guitar, but this teacher taught me how to play mariachi guitar. And as you know, that's a completely different animal.
Definitely. So we might mention how we met, right?
Yeah.
So we met, what was it, a couple of months ago? It wasn't a few months?
Yes. We met at Plaza de Cultura y Arte.
Right. The wonderful cultural center across the street from Lavetta Street. And I was hired to sing a few songs and solo. And there was a female mariachi there. And I was standing there before I went on, and Nancy, rushes in. Were you a little late, or what was going on? You were one of the last ones there, I think.
Yeah. Well, I couldn't find it.
Yeah. And she walked by me real fast, and somehow I said something to her. And right away I caught that she was very sharp and had a good sense of humor. And somehow I said, "You're mariachi?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "You're kind of a punk mariachi, right?" And you go, "Yeah, I am." And you really are. And you'll see later. And so by the end of the day, we were high-fiving and kind of hit it off pretty quick. So that's how we met. So what was the first recordings that you did?
Okay, well, the first recordings I did, I was 21 years old. And at that time I had gone to I had private lessons, and I got into community college, and I wanted to study music. And I had the choice. There was no mariachi in that college. So I had the choice of either classical music or jazz. And I was like, well, I'm not vibing with classical. So I'm just let's see what jazz is all about. And the first time I heard a version of Ella Fitzgerald's How High the Moon, it was a live recording, and she scatted her butt off.
Oh, the greatest.
Yes, I was like, oh my God, what is happening? This is what I need to be doing. And so I really got into jazz. I feel like jazz kind of opened the door of creativity for me, because mariachi, sometimes it's very, very like stay within the lines, stay within the form, and there's not a lot of out playing unless you have a really amazing arranger that can arrange. But a lot of these songs are very standard. And with jazz, I felt like I could just be more creative. Like there are still rules and there's still a form to follow, But once you learn the rules and learn the form, you can just expand out and really develop your own sound, your own voice, and your own personality within the genre, which is something that I didn't feel I was able to do with mariachi. So for most of my 20s, I just really dived into jazz. And for a long time, that's all I did. And on the side, I was songwriting, but we'll get to that later. But so when I turned 21 or 22, I decided to go into the studio with the band that I was performing with. I used to perform at a bar called Steamers Jazz Club. Did you ever hear of
No.
Steamers Jazz Club?
Where is it, or was it?
That's in Fullerton. It was in Fullerton. It closed down years ago, but I had the opportunity to have like a monthly there. I would perform every month, and my band was so killer. I mean, I had musicians from Manhattan School of Music. My drummer was so good, and I was really lucky that I was so fearless, and I would just call whoever I wanted to play with, and they would say yes. And I just, that ended up being my university, and that was my schooling in jazz, playing live gigs and learning my real book, like my standard book.
How did that lead to the recording, jazz?
From that monthly gig that we had, we were so solid that I said, you know what, we have to record. So the drummer at the time kind of took matters into his own hands and said, I know a really cool studio in Brea. Let's go in there. Let's record. We recorded a 7-song EP, and that we did 5 standards. Uh, it was Bésame Mucho, Just One of Those Things, I Remember You, and a couple more. And then 2, this was the first opportunity that I had to perform, like really showcase my songwriting abilities. I always knew innately that I was a songwriter, but I never told anybody. And then when we went into the studio, I said, hey, you know what, you guys? I wrote 2 songs. And I had such a killer band that the songs just came to life. And I wrote a song called Alas in Spanish, which translates to wings. And I wrote a song. This is how young and naive I was. I didn't know there was already a song called Stardust. So I wrote a song called Stardust.
Wow.
And so the drummer at the time was like, Nancy, there's already a song called Stardust. We're just going to call it Stardust 2010.
Interesting.
So it was 2010. So that's what we called it. Do I regret calling it 2010? Yes, I do. But that's not the point. So that was the first EP. It was self-titled. It was just Nancy Sanchez. And that little EP got me a lot of gigs. It got me a lot of exposure. I did a couple jazz festivals in Orange County, the Brea Jazz Festival, the KCRW Jazz Festival. I used to do the pageant of the Masters in Laguna every year. So it really opened doors so that I can perform and continue honing my craft, which was what I needed and what I wanted to do.
So what was the next phase? Was that the Ruby in LA, or was there stuff before that?
Well, the next phase after that, I think maybe a couple years later, I got together pretty much the same guys. And I showed my drummer and another producer that was working with me at the time. I showed them a bunch of songs that I had written. And these are songs that I wrote in my room on my guitar that were super, super raw. And they were mostly in English, which was really interesting because I used to listen to a lot of Latin music. A lot of my influences are, they come from like rock en español and everything in Spanish. But at that time, I felt very, very comfortable in English. So I was just getting inspired in English. So I wrote a bunch of songs, and the producer and the drummer decided to produce the album together. And they were, we chose the songs that had potential. And we went into the studio, but we didn't have a budget. So it was my first time doing crowd raising, but we crowdfunded so that we could have a budget so we can hire musicians and get an engineer and all that. So the album ended up being a 13-song album and all original songs, which I'm so proud of, because that was like my first time really declaring to the world, I'm a songwriter and this is what I love to do. This is what I'm good at. in English. That's really important. And so we did this album, and I decided to call it Ruby in LA because one of the songs was called Ruby in LA. And back in the day when I was 16, 17 years old, one of the first bands that I ever had was called Ruby and the Bear Traps. And I called myself Ruby. So I,
The
being
Bear
an,
Traps.
yeah, the Ruby and the Bear Traps, we were all young teenagers. And I was obsessed with Los Angeles. Being an Orange County girl, all I wanted to do was live in LA. We're down the freeway, we're just down the 5, but trust me, it's two different worlds.
Right. I know.
So after that, after Ruby and the Bear Traps, I wrote a song called Ruby in LA, and it was basically my experience as Ruby being in Los Angeles. So I think I manifested it through that song.
When did you finally move to LA?
I moved to LA when I got accepted to Cal State LA. I decided to go back to school for music.
Which is in East LA.
Yes,
ties into the show. Yes.
exactly. And I went to ELAC, actually. I also went to East LA City College, which has an amazing music program. My theater teacher was so good at ELAC. Then from there, I transferred to Cal State LA, and it was the perfect excuse to say, that's it, I'm moving to LA. Bye-bye. I first moved to Boyle Heights. I lasted 1 month because there was no parking, Mark. There's no parking.
I know. Still, yeah.
Still. So from there, I ended up moving by ELAC, actually, off Atlantic, like borderline Montebello. It was very close.
Close to Monterey Park too?
Yes. Yeah, it was like
Monterey Park is right behind ELAC.
Oh, okay, then yes. And actually, I'm sorry. First it was Alhambra, and then it was East LA, East LA Montebello. And I lasted there for a long time. I love East LA so much. And I decided to go back to school for music because I really love being a student, and I love learning. And I feel like I am a privilege in that I can be both the teacher and the student. I can at any time put either hat on. And I think it's very important as a musician or just as a human being in this world to be able to be both the student and the teacher and give back and learn.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I even recently I've taught classes and I've taken classes, you're a teacher and a student,
Yeah.
If you're wise.
Yeah. So I learned a lot. I love the music program at Cal State LA also. And yeah, so after I graduated, the pandemic hit.
Timing.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I was really lucky that I actually got to walk and receive my diploma from my teachers, and I did do the ceremony. A lot of these younger or later graduates did not get any ceremonies because during the pandemic, everything was online. So they weren't able to walk. And one of the reasons why I wanted to go back to school and really do the ceremony and walk, it was because I wanted my mom and my dad to see that their daughter, was able to go to school in this country. My mom never graduated college. My dad did, but in Mexico. And so for me, it was really important to have my parents present.
Well, coincidentally, I went to East LA College and Cal State LA as well, same schools.
Oh my gosh.
I majored in Chicano studies, got a degree in that.
I mean, they also have a wonderful Chicano studies program there. I almost did Chicano studies, but the music just kept pulling me in that direction.
So how did the Ruby in LA, that led to some other work and other opportunities?
Well, after Ruby in LA, and I decided to flip my brain into Spanish mode.
Okay. Because they're both there. They're both there,
Yes, they're both there. And, I grew up listening to Joni Mitchell and Carole King, and I love all the jazz singers, and they're mostly in English. But I also grew up in the mariachi world, and I love Juan Gabriel. I love Vicente Fernandez. I have all these like, singer-songwriters that I love are like Natalia Lafourcade, Julieta Venegas. And so I always felt like there was something inside me that also belonged in that Spanish category, that Latin alternative category. And I started writing songs in Spanish. And then soon after I met, I don't know if you know Mark Torres.
Yes, is he the guy from KPFK?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So I used to listen to Mark on his radio show when I was living in Orange County. And he had his radio show every Saturday night. And because of that radio show, I discovered a lot of artists like Ceci Bastilla, Tijuana No, and like just like people from the scene, like La Santa Cecilia, Chicano Batman, like my contemporaries that were doing it in LA. I discovered them, and I was really intrigued, and I sent Mark my Ruby in LA album,
Oh,
and he loved it. He loved it so much he put it in his top 10 favorites for that year.
wow.
And then he kept like coming to my gigs just to check out what I was doing. And one day he said, "You know what? I just finished managing this artist, and I'm looking for somebody else to manage. Would you like me to manage you?" And I was like, "Yes, manage me." I need managing. I don't know what I'm doing. Please. And really, Mark Torres, when we started working together, I showed him all the songs in Spanish that I was writing on the side, and he was like, "You know what, Nancy? Let's get you to the studio. Let's record." And we recorded a 10-song album that I called, get this, Mark, Mexican. No, sorry, no, get this, not Mexican, American Novio, because I had just ended a relationship with a non-Mexican guy,
An Anglo, huh?
an Anglo. And that relationship gave me so many ideas and so much inspiration that I wrote a whole album about it, and it's called American Novio, and I put it out.
For those who don't know what novio is, they don't speak Spanish. It's American sweetheart, kind of like.
Yeah, boyfriend.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I did that album with Mark, and then that album led to I put out 2 recordings during the pandemic, because of course everything shut down. So what does a songwriter do when you have nothing to do? You just write songs.
Absolutely.
So I wrote a whole album called La Gran Civilización during 2020, and I recorded it, and that was produced by Joaquin Pacheco, who is very talented young producer in LA. And then I wrote an EP called I call it my protest song EP, and it's called Say Something. And I wrote it during the time when it was the pandemic. George Floyd had been murdered. There was kids in cages. I mean, there were so many things happening that I felt the need to express myself politically, which is something that I never used to do. But during the pandemic, I did it. And I wrote 3 songs for that EP, and it's out, and it was really well received. It was on Amy Goodman's Democracy Now! It was featured on LA Voyage, and so a lot of cool things happened with that EP.
Nice. That's nice. Now, what about the choriceras? Now,
You're
again,
like,
you can
let's
explain
get
where the
that.
term comes from your hometown, and tell that story.
Okay, so the term choricera came from the fact that in Toluca, Mexico, one of the most popular, if not the popular dish of Toluca is the chorizo. For a long time, Toluca was known for its chorizo. Why? Because the Spaniards came to Mexico, and during the conquest, they came to Toluca too, and they brought their chorizo recipes, their longaniza recipes, and they brought pigs, cerdos. They brought cerdos to Toluca. And the Franciscans, were the ones that founded the city. So it's a very religious city, to tell you the truth. All my family is very, very devout Catholics. I think it's because of the Franciscanos. But they brought their chorizo recipes, and one in particular is green chorizo made with chile verde. So, um, so the women in Toluca, they're called choriceras, and the men are called choriceros out of just like it's like a sweet name for them, really. And that's when people say, oh, he's a choricera, or he's a choricero, it's, they know automatically that that person's from Toluca.
Right. So when I saw that name, when I saw your record about Choriceras, I thought you were just being a punk mariachi, and you're saying we're the Choriceras, we're proud of chorizo. And I thought it was a punk name, and it is, but I
Yeah.
didn't know it had a true history that went back to your heritage in your hometown.
Well, and that's what's cool about it,
Yeah,
because it is kind of a punk rock name,
right.
but it also has this history behind it that's tied to my heritage that I'm really proud of. But let me tell you, when I was a little girl and I knew this fact, I was so embarrassed. I didn't want anybody to know. I was like, why would you call us that? That's so mean. And as I've gotten older, I just think it's one of the cutest, just most
Yeah,
endearing things to be
yeah,
called.
yeah.
And, I went to Mexico last year during the summer. I went to Toluca and I stayed there for 1 month. And I was with all my family. I went to the volcano. I just did everything touristy that I can imagine because I wanted to do it as an adult. And that word kept popping up every 5 seconds. And I was like, I have to bring this word back, but I don't know how. I have to think about it. And I've always wanted to have a female group, mariachi inspired group. And I love female mariachi groups. I love there's so many here in LA,
Right.
Mariachi Reina de Los Angeles, Mariachi Divas, Las Adelitas, which came first, Las Colibri, which I play with them as well. And one of my favorite groups from New York, Flor de Toloache, have been really one of my biggest inspirations. I was lucky enough to tour with them for a little bit a couple years ago while their Viguela player was out. And I just felt like, oh man, if I can have a little bit of all these groups into one and have that Toluca flavor, that would be the highest form of expression for me as a Toluqueña, as a choricera. And then I said, you know what? It would be great if we were called Las Choriceras. And it stuck. I kept telling people, and people were like, that is such a good idea. That is so cool. It's actually it's so layered. That name is so layered. And whenever I tell people, people are always thrown off, but then they're like, oh wow, that's cool. So yeah, that's where it came from.
So how would you describe the music that Choriceras make in your original music?
I describe the music Las Chorizas make as mariachi fusion, Latin alternative, or instead of regional Mexican, it's regional alternative. That's how I would describe it. And my whole purpose with Las Choriceras is that I want to have an outlet to still continue being a creative songwriter, but with a mariachi flavor. Because in my solo project, I can write a reggaeton song or a cumbia song or a pop song, and it really is very eclectic. But with Choriceras, I feel like it's a little bit more on the traditional side because of the mariachi instruments. We have a violin, a guitarrón, a vihuela, but it also lends itself to be an original group because I write original music. And right now we are in the studio recording our first album. It's going to be self-titled Las Choriceras, and it's going to be 5 original songs that I've written. And we might add one more that my vocalist Darlene wrote. It's, you know what it's called?
Yeah.
It's called the Curse of the Blue-Eyed Man.
Okay.
And it's such a cute song that I was like, I think we need to add it. For the album, they're all going to be original. We only have one cover that we recorded, and that's the one you've heard, Open Arms.
Yes.
So this year, Mark, we were lucky to be asked to be on a Netflix show called The Lincoln Lawyer. They're on their third season. I got called as a songwriter first. They said, you know what, Nancy, we want a Spanish version of Journey, the band Journey, their song Open Arms. And I said, fine, I'll do it. So I wrote the Spanish lyrics to Open Arms and I called it Dispuesto a Amar. And after that, they were like, well, we're wondering if you can record it with your mariachi trio. And I said, of course we can do that. So I went into the studio with the Chorizeras. We recorded the song, and then they got back to us and they were like, we love it so much that we want you guys to be in the last episode of season 3. So season 2, I think. No, season 2. I'm sorry. It's season 2. We were so lucky that we were invited to participate in the show. We're in the last episode and we got to be on stage with the actors. We got to just be a part of that whole wedding scene. If you guys check it out, it's a wedding scene. It's so beautiful. And we were pampered. We had our own makeup artist. We had our own guy bringing us food. He was like, do you guys want Starbucks? What do you guys want? Whatever it is. We felt like such rock stars. And because of that experience, we decided to go back into the studio and record more music because we said, you know what? We got a pretty good thing going on. We like each other. We talk, we all get along. And let me tell you, it's kind of hard to get along with a bunch of females. But
Tell me about it. Tell me about it.
But this combination of females, we get along and we have a lot of fun, and it's been a good experience so
is
far.
the next album going to include the Open Arms thing or no?
Yes, we're including
And is it all
that
going to
one
be
in
in
there.
that vibe where you're going to take pop songs and mariachiize them in your way?
Actually, no. Well, yes, it's going to be mariachi flavor, but Open Arms is the only cover. All the other songs are original songs.
Okay. I'll tell you one thing. I heard that Open Arms, and it is absolutely fantastic. Your vocal is great, and
Thank you.
so to hear that song with a mariachi background is incredible. It would be cool if somebody who did one like that of all pop tunes doing that to it. That would be great, really.
Yeah, I think that is also in our plan to keep doing that. But what I love is that I feel like original music is really where it's at for me because that's what I feel more comfortable with. But when we have our live shows, we do a song, a Gershwin song. We do Summertime, and we merge it into a mariachi song.
Nice.
So we do a lot of fusion that way.
Great idea. I love it. Yeah. And I did see that episode and I saw you guys in there. It was pretty cool. And I'd never heard of that show, but yeah, the lead character is bilingual, right? He's very Chicano.
Yeah, well, he's actually Mexicano from Guadalajara. He has perfect Spanish and English. Yeah, so but he is a Mexican actor. I don't know where he lives now, but it's Manuel Rulfo, I think that's his name. And he did such a good job. He did such a good job because I think the original character for Lincoln Lawyer is a Chicano. So he really did a really good job playing a Chicano. And the first scene, if you guys watch the first episode of the first season, you'll see that that whole shot, it's him driving his Lincoln. That's why it's called the Lincoln Lawyer. All over LA, they pass through Boyle Heights, through East LA, through Mariachi Plaza, through Little Tokyo, and it's so cool. So it's such an LA show, which makes it even cooler that we are a part of it because we're an LA band. And we play all over the city, so it's just very special.
On Netflix, right?
It's on Netflix, yeah.
Cool. So what else? There's something else that we've missed, or what else would you like to say?
Well, I just kind of wanted to touch base a little bit on what I do on the side, which is also just I do music placement for TV and film. And I've been really lucky to have music in shows like in shows like the FX series Mayans MC. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. Mayans MC, the motorcycle show.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I've also had music in one of my favorite shows, It's called Vida. It was on Stars. I don't know if they're still on Stars, but I had music placed on season 1 and season 3. And I've also done, a Target commercial. I just did a commercial for the jewelry. Okay, jewelers. So that's one of the things that I love to do, is like just write for placement. I really enjoy doing that. The way I get these gigs are just random. They just kind of fall from like the God. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, the one thing that I would like to invite people to do is to invite them to all my to join my social medias. Follow me on Instagram, on Facebook.
Yes.
I'm also on Spotify. And I have a lot of music that is not Chorizeras. It's Nancy Sanchez. And this year I released a song called Alma Perdida.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of my favorite songs that I've written, because I think it's one of the most personal kind of songs that I've written. It talks about just like my experience as a woman, as an artist, someone that doesn't have kids, is not married, and I'm kind of living this like artistic life, which is amazing, but at the same time it could be very lonely. Mm-hmm. And so I put it all into that song, and I worked on it with my friend Raul Pacheco from Ozo Motley. He produced the song, and that's what I put out this year, and I'm hoping to put out more songs in that like in that style in the upcoming year, 2024, which is in like 3 weeks.
Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah. So did you do any other singles? I think you mentioned you did more than one single in 2023.
In 2023, I did Alma Perdida, and I can't remember if I also did a song called La Muchacha Alegre, the happy woman, with my friend Rene Ghost from Mexico City, who's mm-hmm. also a very lovely songwriter as well. Mm-hmm. And La Muchacha Alegre we did it kind of like a corrido style mm-hmm. Song. And it's a response to a song that El Charro Avitia wrote called El Muchacho Alegre, and it's a very, very famous Mexican song. But Rene came in with La Muchacha Alegre and wanted to kind of write a song in the perspective of the female, like the female perspective of, instead of El Muchacho Alegre, La Muchacha Alegre. So that one's out as well. So if you guys go on Spotify, you can hear Alma Perdida, La Muchacha Alegre, and we're going to do a version of Las Chorizeras mariachi version of La Muchacha Alegre for the upcoming year as well.
Yeah, recently you sent me through Facebook, you sent me a clip of you doing my dad's Canción Mexicana with a mariachi somewhere, and that really blew my mind. You were able to really belt that out. Where was that, and what mariachi was that, and how did you pick that song?
It's a song that we do in the Mariachi Las Colibri. It's a song that actually I didn't used to sing it. The main our directora Susie was the one that would sing it, and then another girl would sing it. And then for some reason I learned it because I think it just stuck. We did it so much that it stuck in my head, and I didn't know who had written it. Mm-hmm. And it was so catchy, and I learned it. And then later I found out, oh, Lalo wrote that song, and I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. So I sang it with them. I also sang that song with my group, with Chorizeras, and it's just such a special song. We did it for, I think it was a Dia de los Muertos celebration. Mm-hmm. I can't remember. It was in a cemetery. That's Ooh. The video. Yeah. And I can't remember where it was though, but I saw this lady that was filming me, and while I was singing it, and right after we got off stage, I went straight to her and I said, "Señora, can I please get that video?" It's rare when we film ourselves, you know.
Well, that's great. It was a great version, yeah. And amazingly, that was the first song my dad ever wrote in his life. He was 17 years old.
Oh my God!
Imagine that being your first song.
That's incredible, and it's been covered by so many people.
Every
Who was the first person?
The first one was Lucha Reyes.
Lucha Reyes. I mean, how you can get more old school classic singer than Lucha Reyes.
And then Lola Beltran later on.
Wow. So, wow. Well, cool. Now I sing it.
And now you sing. Now you're on that list.
Yeah.
I dug what you did. So I think that's about it, huh? I think we covered it all.
I think so. Okay. Yeah.
Well, I want to thank you for doing the show, and I'll let you know when it's up.
Thank you so much, Mark, and
Welcome.
saludos to everybody who's watching and listening. Thank you for checking us out, and I invite you to follow me on all the social medias and check out some of my music and follow Las Chorizeras.
Definitely. All right. Okay, I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.